Welcome to Sermon Updates Midweek, my chance to talk a little bit more about my message from this past Sunday as we talked about count your blessings, the blessing of suffering. Yeah, I know that sounds pretty strange, but we have a lot to be thankful for, and it really is a blessing to suffer. It's not an easy lesson to learn, it's not an easy lesson to listen to, it's not an easy thing to accept. I was thinking about my own life and some of the times to where suffering, looking back on it, was actually a benefit to me greater than the discomfort that it was to me at the moment. I remember we moved to Oak Ridge, Tennessee at the end of my sixth grade year. I was in sixth grade for about a week or so when we moved there, and then the summer came, and I had the opportunity to play football. So where we had moved from in central Illinois, our school did not have a football team. So there was no football. So this was my opportunity. I was a big kid. In seventh grade, I was 5'11" and a half inches tall, and I weighed, gosh, how much did I weigh back then? Oh, 5'11" and a half. No, that was in sixth grade. I was 6'1" in seventh grade. Yeah, 6'1", weighed, I don't know, 137, 145 pounds, something like that. But I was too big to play in the recreational football league. I had played for the school. So I went to a junior high that was seventh, eighth, and ninth graders, and I was the only seventh grader on this eighth and ninth grade football team because all other kids my age were playing on the school leagues. So what wound up happening to me is I was a little porky. I was a little bit overweight. Not really all that much for a kid my size, but I wound up losing a bunch of weight because we had two a days and we worked really hard, and the clothing that I was given, so being the only seventh grader, I was given a wool jersey, long sleeve wool winter jersey from probably the 1940s, that I wore as my uniform. And I was absolutely miserable. It was really hot in eastern Tennessee, and the conditions were far from ideal. I remember having a discussion with my dad on the way. I don't remember if it was going to one of the early morning two a day practices or it was coming home, but I remember telling my dad that I thought that I wanted to quit football and didn't want to play. And I remember my dad had a discussion with me about things you start, you need to finish. And when the season's over with, I wanted to stop playing. That was one thing, but I needed to see through my commitment. And it was one of the most important lessons I have ever had in my life. That lesson would not have been learned had I not gone through the great suffering that I went through as I was losing all that weight and just feeling bad and feeling overworked and overwhelmed. I would have never gotten to that point if it weren't for that experience. While in Oak Ridge, I remember that um, they had a walk for mankind that they did every year to where it was one of those things to raise money. You'd raise money for walking so far, and it was a 20-mile walk. And I remember myself and a bunch of friends, a bunch of us in school were doing it, and I decided I was going to do it. 20 miles is a long way, and you think about cars and things about that when you're talking about traveling 20 miles. But I remember as I'm walking around the city, and eventually all my buddies, everybody who was with me, dropped out and they stopped. And I kept going, and I kept going. And one of the reasons I was able to keep going, so this was like the spring after that difficult football season. Um, I had learned a lesson from those football practices. That's if you just keep going, you will eventually make it to where you need to go or want to go. There's some things you only learn in the midst of suffering. Some lessons you can't learn in the midst of the blessing, or what we perceive as the blessing. I guess this goes to a point that I've made many times. I think that blessing and curse are both part of how God deals with us and works with us in our lives. God blesses us at times, and we receive the countless good things from Him, but in other times we go through difficulty and hardship. And I think they're both instruments to draw us closer to Him. I think that's the simple fact. We can count the blessing of suffering, because even in the midst of the hardship and the difficulty, God is blessing. I hope you have a wonderful day. God bless.